What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. The Russian propaganda now uses sophisticated jargon to try and justify economic strategies that lack a solid scientific foundation. One such term gaining traction is Military Keynesianism, which is being used to rationalize the nation's war efforts and their supposed economic benefits. This is the typical example of if I use complicated and unfamiliar words, the people might think that I'm smart and actually doing something useful. With this approach, it looks like that Putin kinda finally started to listen to his inner circle members, most likely the head of the Central Bank of Russia, Elvira Nabiullina, and he tried to solve the economic problems of Russia himself. But as you would expect, a person who lacks the precise understanding of economic complexities of a huge nation, well, he just ended up making things way worse. The result has not been yet felt, but the very first steps towards even worse economic situation have already been taken. Honestly, if you think about it, if Putin just left things as they are and let the actually smart people try and solve these problems, probably the situation would not be as disastrous as it can potentially become. But knowing Putin, who wants to take everything under control and micromanage everyone, the temptation for him not to intervene was just too much. Well, let's talk today about this military Keynesianism. What is it? Why Putin decided that this is the best way to go? And what can be the potential outcomes? To fully understand what is military Keynesianism, why it was applied in Russia and why it most likely will not work, we must first understand the fundamentals of Keynesianism economics. And don't worry, I'll be quick, this is not your typical economics 101 class. So, developed by the British economist John Maynard Keynes during the Great Depression, Keynesianism advocates for the active government intervention to manage economic cycles. The core idea is that during periods of economic downturn, the government can stimulate growth by increasing public spending and creating jobs, therefore boosting demand. The concept of the fiscal multiplier plays a crucial role here as well. It suggests that every dollar the government injects into the economy can generate multiple dollars in economic activity. For example, paying a worker to build a road not only provides this person with income, but also stimulates consumption when this person spends their own earnings on goods and services. A worker received, let's say $200 for a day full of work. Then he went to the closest store and bought fancy pants for $150. The store used $150 to buy a couple more pants from the manufacturer. The manufacturer used this money to pay his factory workers, and then the factory worker bought some groceries with this salary. This is an extremely oversimplified example, but you get the idea. In order to start this chain of events, according to Keynesian theory, the government has to infuse money into one of government-related sectors. If they want to boost the economic activity, they infuse more money. This increased consumption leads to higher revenues for businesses, which in turn pay their employees, creating a ripple effect throughout the economy. If they want to reduce the economic activity, well, they do exactly the opposite. So far, everything makes sense, right? Well, not quite. The practical implementation of Keynesian policies has revealed significant challenges. Firstly, governmental interventions often suffer from delays, the notorious bureaucratic machine, which takes weeks to solve the problems that would normally take minutes or hours. By the time relief programs and infrastructure projects are approved and initiated, the economic situation may have already shifted, potentially and most likely exacerbating the inflation during a recovery period. Secondly, governments are typically inefficient investors. They may fund obsolete industries, save failing companies, or invest in projects without sufficient demand, leading to wasted resources and money. This is especially common in Russia, where surprisingly a lot of uncles, aunts, nephews, nieces and cousins of government representatives, they suddenly win the majority of government tenders and contracts. What a coincidence, right? And lastly, political agendas and conflicts of interest can derail economic objectives. Decisions influenced by lobbying, political pressure, and the desire to maintain power can result in misallocated funds and projects that do not serve the public interest. As you can see, in the perfect world, there is a chance that Keynesianism will work. But it will work only on paper, under ideal circumstances and extremely efficient government. Usually neither of those things happen. And all of this is completely the opposite from what Putin built around him, while making the situation even worse. In the context of Russia, the term military Keynesianism is being misused to justify extensive military spending as a means to stimulate economic growth. Proponents claim that the war effort has created jobs, revitalized factories, and increased consumption property sales. They argue that despite the broader economic hardships, such as rising prices, depreciating currency, and huge probability of stagflation, the military endeavors have bolstered the real economy. Basically, Putin, through his smart-sounding henchmen, he tries to justify the war at all costs. Once again. This narrative overlooks critical distinctions between Russia's situation and the conditions under which Keynesian policies might be effective. In the past, military Keynesianism could be seen in the United States during the Second World War, where massive military production helped reduce the unemployment from 19% in 1938 to less than 1.5% in 1944. The key factor was the already existing large pool of unemployed workers who could be mobilized for war production. The idea was that since there are so many unemployed people, let's just put most of them in factories producing military-related equipment and weapons. And that's why, somewhat, military Keynesianism worked. But Russia does not suffer from the high unemployment. As of the most recent quarter of 2024, the unemployment level is at absolutely normal and healthy 2.4% level. Not 19%, what used to be in the US, not even close. Russia mostly faces a shortage of professional talent and an aging workforce. The nation's demographic trends reveal a declining number of young active workers and a growing elderly population. Even before the war, a lot of smart young people went to Europe, the US or Canada in search for a better life, where their skills will be properly compensated. After the war started, the exile accelerated significantly. It is usually the smart people who do not support Putin's invasion because they know better. And that's why this extremely crucial part of the society started leaving, creating a huge, gaping hole in Russia's competent workforce. And when Putin put Russia's economy on military tracks and introduced the concept of military Keynesianism, it made the situation even worse, much worse. By channeling already scarce human resources into military activities and away from productive sectors, the government exaggerates the workforce deficit. The creation of jobs in military industries does not address unemployment but diverts labor from essential economic areas, undermining long-term growth. The unemployment has not decreased from double to single digits. It remained more or less the same. What changed is the hundreds of thousands smart people who could have been working in IT, engineering, science, or even starting their own businesses and companies. Well, now they just assemble tanks and drones because the starting salary here is 3-4 times higher than they would have received if they followed their careers. There is also a huge problem of the military economy, which can only survive for as long as the war is going. Once the conflict is over, the military economy collapses. And Putin is too stubborn to acknowledge mistakes and make changes while there is still time. Russia's current economic policy has led to an overheated economy, characterized by skyrocketing inflation and a wage price spiral. Despite efforts by the central bank to control inflation through high interest rates, the unprecedented 21, potentially 23% in December, and also favorable oil prices, domestic demand for money remains high due to the government's continued injection of unsecured rubles into the economy. This situation creates a paradox where traditional monetary policy tools become simply ineffective. In a typical scenario, high interest rates would discourage borrowing and spending, cooling down the economy. However, when the government is the primary spender, especially on non-productive military endeavors, increased costs from higher interest rates do not prevent spending, but instead lead to simply higher inflation. High interest rates also target, and mostly target, the regular people. Mortgages, car payments, credit card loans are higher. In this case, yes, it helps to slow down the economic activity. But when the Ministry of Defense of Russia orders a new batch of T-90M proof tanks worth billions of rubles, and the government has no other choice than to pay it, in this case high interest rates mean absolutely nothing. Billions of rubles, hundreds of billions of rubles created out of nowhere, they do affect the economy significantly. The conflicting actions of the Treasury and the Central Bank, where one is pumping money into the economy and the other is trying to restrict it, it results in policy incoherence. This financial tug-of-war diminishes the effectiveness of economic interventions and sends the economy towards stagflation, a condition of stagnant or even absent growth combined with high inflation. The wage price spiral intensifies as businesses raise prices to cover increasing costs. Workers demand higher wages to keep up with the cost of living, and the cycle repeats itself until it is no longer sustainable. The challenge of Russia's economy dilemma lies not in unemployment, but in a shrinking labor force and inefficient allocation of resources. The government's focus on sustaining the war effort at all costs leads to neglect of the underlying demographic and economic challenges. Instead of implementing policies that could enhance productivity and address the aging population, such as investing in education, healthcare, and technological innovation, the state, or better say, Putin, persists in strategies that deplete Russia's human capital. The misuse of complex economic terminology to justify these policies obscures the reality of the situation. Comparing Russia's actions to Keynesianism is misleading, as the conditions necessary for Keynesian stimulus, such as underutilized labor and capital, are not present in modern Russia. There is no need for military Keynesianism in Russia right now. It will not solve its economic problems. In fact, it will make the situation even worse if Putin continues this course. But saying on state TV channels that Russia adopted the theory of military Keynesianism in order to try and save the economy, well, it does sound cool, unknown and sophisticated for those who don't know what it means. And it looks like that this was the main goal of Putin's administration. Just make it sound smart, so people relax and forget about the financial problems, so that they think that the state has taken the situation under the control and the solution is coming. The best analogy here would be prescribing very potent painkillers to a patient who does not need them, ignoring the potential harm and addiction. A person takes strong medicine to cure mild headache and then becomes addicted to the medicine itself, ruining the health even further. Well, there you have it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Don't forget about Black Friday discounts for our merch at therussiandude.com. Thanks so much for watching and see you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.